Brother White, good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Listen, hey Pam, welcome back.
Thank you.
Couple things. I just am not clear why ECU does not get the respect that it deserves. That's a whole nother story. That's my
Mm.
alma mater. I just think you talk about ECU. People talk about ECU like we the David and NC State is the Goliath. I
Wow.
mean,
Ooh.
that's a whole nother story, and
Ooh.
that includes UNC as well. But that's a really another
Wow.
story
I
as
mean,
well.
I mean, you so far out there, people.
Okay, all right, K Mac. But listen, let me just say this. Let me say this. Now, I am the first one to have to celebrate the story of Francis Tiafoe. Now, I know we've already talked about it, but there's just some celebrations in this U.S. Open and what's been happening in this last month, and some challenges when we think about different stories. And because we've already celebrated the amazing, maybe potential final pirouette of Serena Williams, because who knows if she's going to retire. And then I'm also disturbed. I'm going to be transparent. I was emotional when I watched once again UNC, but this time when I watched the bands between UNC and FAMU, and if you never checked that out, the fact that UNC and FAMU had a cultural reality like never before.
Yes.
But then I'm also challenged by the story of Rachel Richardson, the Duke volleyball player who heard the N word, which was over 2 weeks ago. Now, what do all these stories have in common on this hump day? Something that many people live with even beyond hump day. And it's this question we've got to ask ourselves. Are we living and leading in spite of the context that we're in or because of the context that we're in? Why was Francis Tiafoe shedding tears, crying in his towel? And ironically enough, he's in Arthur Ashe Stadium because he had just defeated Rafael Nadal. Now, Rafael Nadal, 2005, he wins the French Open at 19 years old. 2008, Wimbledon, 22 years old. Rafael Nadal won his first U.S. Open at 24 years old, and he's got a record of 22 Grand Slam titles, more than any other male player in tennis history. And listen, the reality is he's 31-2 in Grand Slams against Americans. He's won 27 straight wins. The last time he lost to an American was in 2005 to James Blake. Is that why he was crying? Well, no. I think Francis Tiafoe was crying because he was born in 1998, him and his twin brother in Maryland. And he was born to Francis Sr. Tiafoe and Alfina Kamara, who were immigrants from Sierra Leone. And they immigrated to the United States in 1993, escaping some of the tragedies that was going on in Sierra Leone. And in 1999, his father ended up working as a day laborer on a construction crew that built the Junior Tennis Champions Center in College Park, Maryland. And when the facility was complete, his father worked as a custodian. And what his father did is his father took Francis and his twin brother Franklin, and they lived in a storage room there at the Junior Tennis Champion Center. And they lived in that room for 11 years. Now, while they lived there, at 4 years old, Tiafoe picked up a racket. And one of the realities is they stayed and made beds on two tables in a storage room. Now, the tennis center is celebrating Francis now, but why in the world would they allow a father to stay in a storage room with his two sons for 11 years? Tiafoe's accomplishments, he accomplished the unthinkable in spite of rather than because of. Yes, we're still celebrating Serena Williams, but now there's one person who's not celebrating her. 80-year-old
Yeah, I
Margaret
saw
Court,
this.
who feels that Serena is not respecting her record of 24 Grand Slam wins. She even said that Serena, because she was in the Open era, had it easier. Are you kidding me? Serena, again, this is what I have to say like Kate Mack. Really? Really? Serena has been in an era where her body's been disrespected, her motherhood has been disrespected, comes through the public courts of Compton. Serena has achieved in spite of her context rather than because of. Yes, 2 weeks later, we're still talking about the Duke volleyball player, Rachel Richardson, but now we're wondering, did she really tell the truth? Now the media has put out that you can't hear on the video anyone using the N-word. But maybe we need to think about the context where all of this is happening. No judgment. These are the views, not of the Radio Shop. These are my views. But BYU in Mormon territory and built from a Mormon structure is not necessarily the moral grounds of equity. Because one of the truths of Mormonism, unfortunately enough, it wasn't until 1978 that the Mormon church even said that black people now can be in leadership, and black men to be specifically. Not until 1978. And there's still doctrines that would suggest black people are cursed and some other dynamics in Mormonism. Man, when we think about the whole context of BYU, where this happened, are leaders having to live in spite of rather than because of? Now, as I mentioned earlier, I love what we saw at UNC and the beauty of the bands playing together at FAMU. However,
Yes.
there's so much more to the story of that game because you had 20 players that were ineligible. 20 football players. And why were they ineligible? Well, the players have given a note to the president that says, part of the reason for their ineligibility is because of the poor administration at FAMU. Can you believe it? Only one academic advisor for 300-plus student athletes. They also said that the university cut their tickets and didn't allow many of their parents to even come to the game, and the university didn't provide housing or meal programs to players during the summer so they could maintain their physical conditioning.
Right.
Here we go again, another situation of leading and living in spite of rather than because of. But I'm thankful for Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders, in the midst of the tragic flooding of Jackson, Mississippi, there at Jackson State, is demonstrating, creating a context of because of. And he's changed the context that those players have been living in and achieving and saying, my players will live different ways. He's creating a different context so that they will be able to say, we're able to thrive because of. On this hump day, I hope we tell a different story. And if we have any influence today, maybe we all need to say, can I create an environment that people can flourish in because of, not in spite of? No one is asking for special treatment or a handout. But if we are an institution or leading in any place where there's power, we have to live and create a context that people can thrive because of our leadership, not in spite of. That's important because at the end of the day, no matter what we see, there's always going to be more of the story, but may that story be because of our leadership and not in spite of.
Okay.
Powerful.
Because of, not in
Not
spite
in
of.
spite of.
That's a message.
Wow.
Brother White,